afternoon.
Hello, guys.
How you doing? If we were there, we'd talk to you about these things up front and hear your responses, but it's quite difficult to just speak in a camera without your reaction, so do forgive how incredibly awkward this will be. We just wanted to make sure that you remember everything we did when you were here. So, for the next couple minutes, we will jog your memory and ensure that whatever it was you've retained, you can apply it. Let's go.
Hey, guys. So, last time you were here, we were at the lake and we were talking about the things that we found in the trap net. So, who can remember what kind of system we have in a lake? Or what kind of system a lake is?
If you said lentic, you were correct.
That's right. What does the word lentic mean? Or what do we mean when we say we have a lentic system? Anyone? Reed, can you help us out?
Well, there's only two kinds of ways water is in the mainland. It is either flowing or not flowing. As you can see, it is not flowing.
Therefore, a lentic system, as our lake is a non-flowing system. So what does that mean for the things that we'll find in the lake? What kind of adaptations will they have to live in a lentic system? If you said swim bladder, you are correct. That was an answer that we talked about while you were here. So what does a swim bladder do for, for something you'll find in the lake? Reed, you want to help me out?
Think of it like a balloon. It inflates and deflates. It allows the fish to become buoyant in the water. So if he wants to go low, he simply increases the amount of air inside of his swim bladder so that he can remain buoyant. If he wants to rise, he simply blows out. Now, if you're deep sea fishing and you catch a fish from way down low and you pull it up too fast, it will likely explode because the pressure decreases outside of the fish's swim bladder, whereas the same amount of air is still pressurized in the bladder, causing the fish to explode. It's gross. Now, if you want to look closely at the water, you'll notice that there are a lot of leaves, new leaves. And if you look up, you will see why. As you know, it's wintertime, almost. The leaves have dropped. Now, does anyone remember what this is for? What biological service do these leaves provide? If you thought to yourself, to increase aquatic invertebrate diversity, you were right. Any stretch of that chain of thought, in fact. These leaves will help the larval stages of these insects survive through the winter. And come spring, fish will have something to eat. And you'll have something to catch them with. Now, if you look out into the vastness of the lake, hey! You will hear my voice come back. What you will also see is that the lake is starting to mix. So now, unlike during the summertime, when the lake is stratified, most of the lake is the same temperature, which means most of it has the same amount of oxygen. This is called turnover. And right now, the lake is beginning to mix strongly from the upper layer and the lower layer, which means the fish are not likely to bite a lot. especially with this wind. Everything in the lake is having to deal with this change. One way they're dealing with this change, they have temperature control.
Or thermoregulation.
Thermoregulation. If you look across to where that wooden structure is, in the lake, slightly to the left, there is a tree jutting out. In that tree is a gigantic beaver lodge. Those beavers made it to where they can get in the water winter, spring, summer, fall, but not be wet all year round. And that is a way of coping with the changing environment.
Action. Row, row, row your boat. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Life is but a dream. But a dream. Well, hey guys. We are just, taking a little tour of the lake today. It's a beautiful fall day, a little chilly. The water is ice cold. Don't get in, don't tip your canoe. But we are just paddling along. See how we're holding the T-grip here, as I'm sure you guys remember. And we're just going out to see that log Reed mentioned earlier in the video.
We're wearing our PFDs because we believe in safety.
That's correct. And what do PFD stand for?
Personal flotation device.
Thank you, Reed. So, remember kids, safety first. So now, as you can see, we're a little bit closer to the log with the beaver's habitat that we talked about earlier. It will be below the surface of the water, so we won't really be able to see much of it. But it's pretty ingenious how they're able to construct a way in which they can exit and enter the water, but also stay there. So, pretty lucky to have some beavers in our lake system.
To our left, for you duck hunters, is a perfect wood duck tree. Now, this tree has holes in it. The center of the tree has been eaten out by a fungus called red heart fungus. And it's opened up the tree for wildlife to live in. This, of course, is called a cavity tree. They're one of the very most important habitats that you will find in a forest. Many kinds of birds, small mammals, insects, reptiles, all rely on these cavity trees to nest, reproduce, and generally just get out of the elements and hang out. Think of a cavity tree like walking into a recliner store. That is the equivalent. Very nice.
As you can see, we're pulling the Titanic right now and breaking some ice on the surface of our lake. It's gotten pretty cold the last few nights at Camp Lake Stevens, and so we've had ice form, not just here, but also on the steps outside of our houses. So we've had to be a little cautious.
Now,
As you-
fishermen,
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Reed.
I want you to pay attention. When the lake freezes over, the ice blocks the wind from blowing on top of the water. Now, what do you think this does for the things living in the water? If you thought to yourself it protects them from the wind turning over the waters, you would be correct. And so essentially the ice causes a winter stratification, where the top of the water is frozen and the bottom is not. Now what's interesting about water is that it's less dense when it's frozen. So water is at its most dense at 4 degrees Celsius. And once it drops below that, it begins to freeze and it loses density because the freezing process causes the water to expand. And that's why ice floats. If ice did not float, there would be nowhere where water froze that things could live in the water. because obviously they would get, you know, ice on them and die. This ice is not very thick, but it does the job.
So we will not be ice skating
No.
anytime soon on this
Now,
ice.
if you were a water strider, or a lizard, or a forest fairy, you might find that fun. We are neither of those things.
To your left, you'll notice that we have a tire sticking out of our lake. And there's a purpose for that tire. It's actually placed here so it can be habitat for fishes who are needing to have a safe place to, I don't think nest is the right word. Reed, what would you say?
Yes.
Nest is the correct word? Okay. Sounds a little funny when you say it about fish. But anyway, fish need a safe place to lay their eggs and to keep their young from other creatures in the lake that would care to eat them. So anyways, we place things like tires, and after the Christmas season is over, we'll take old Christmas trees and sink them by tying bricks to them into the lake so that fish can also use that as habitat for their young.
And as you can see, we can touch the ground with our paddles. It's very shallow here. This is where fish would come after they are born to seek refuge from larger fish. And it's important to put these nesting spots where the fish will have a better chance of survival. If I were to put them out in the middle of the lake, well, it's like putting a baby out in the middle of the lake, isn't it?
It's a big open space, more prone to predators. So we choose places, or the fish will choose places like this, which is a wetland habitat, that they'll have more cover and less of a chance to be seen by predators. Other things take refuge in our wetlands, such as waterfowl come and like to lay their eggs here because, again, it's a habitat with a lot of cover that they can feel safe in. Also, other animals come, such as, I think, deer spend time here, I think in the warmer seasons. But yeah, so wetlands are very important. Have a high biodiversity. Action.
Well, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Why isn't anything growing in the garden?
Well, Jeff, I'm hungry too. It is right about past lunchtime, but nothing's growing in the garden because it's winter.
What does that mean?
That means that it's really cold, and you know how we had all those peppers earlier?
Yeah.
And those tomatoes and corn and all that
Yep,
other good
yep.
stuff?
Yep.
Well, that grows in the summer,
Oh.
Jeff. And we don't have anything that grows in the winter.
Why not?
Because we didn't plant anything. Because we didn't plant anything.
You should. Well,
But we could have planted cabbage or kale and other stuff like that, and we could be harvesting that right now if we wanted to. But I don't believe there are many plants here that we could plant in the winter.
cool.
So let's go catch some fish
Sounds good.
to eat,
Mm-hmm.
because you're hungry.
Yeah.
Drop it. Drop it.
So, Will,
So
look
Jeff,
at the bees.
I don't really see any bees, Jeff.
Oh man, that's really too bad.
Why aren't there any bees out?
Well, why is nothing going in the garden? Because it's cold.
Yeah.
It's cold, and you don't like to be out in the cold. Bees don't like to be out in the cold. They're in there trying to stay warm.
That's true.
Do you know how they're staying warm, Will?
How are they staying warm? I don't know.
Well, what they like to do is they huddle real close,
Right?
real close,
Mhm.
closer,
They get closer,
closer,
closer.
and they have to flap their wings. Stay warm
Yep. Okay.
because it's cold.
Okay. Flap my wings.
Okay, and that's how they do it. They do that all winter long.
How does that warm them up?
Body temperature, body temperature.
Body heat.
That's what I said.
Cool.
Yep. So there's really no reason for me to be wearing all this crap.
Right.
because the bees aren't out.
Why would you have that on there, I guess, if it were summertime?
Well, bees have a little thing that you may have heard about called stingers.
Ooh, fingers.
Stingers.
Okay.
And they sting.
Uh-huh.
So these are just a way you can protect yourself
Okay.
from said stingers.
You don't want to get stung.
You don't want to get stung. It's not all a lot of fun. But there's no honey in there now. Actually, there's a lot of honey in there now, but none that we can take.
Right.
Because they're eating it all to stay warm.
And that's why we didn't take
Because
it
this is very high in
Right.
caloric
Mhm.
spending.
all. I guess that's why we didn't harvest all the honey. Is we left some for them.
That's right.
We don't want to take all their honey.
That'd be bad.
That would
That'd be real bad. Lego.
Oh,
My ego.
so why would it not have a baby in it?
Oh.
What if he did?
It's a surprise. No, it's not.
Are you sure this is
Hey guys, so as you can see, we're currently in the field where you were on your trip to us, and hopefully you'll notice that there's much less grass grown in this part of the field. That's because earlier, a few weeks ago actually, we had a regulated burn in which we set specific parameters around the outside edge of the field and set fire to certain parts of the field so that grasses that are not heat resistant would burn, while the ones that were would remain. And so that also we could stimulate plants that require heat to germinate, and so that they can produce their seed.
Native grass tends to grow in a bunch, and it's designed to tolerate fire. Things like what you have in your lawn, fescue, Bermuda, they're not fire tolerant. And so if they're out here, they're a non-native invasive species, and when they get burned, they go away. And stuff like broom sedge, which is what you see for the most part, I mean, it's still here, clearly. There's less seed heads, there's less stems, but it's still here. And in the spring, it's going to come back more prolific than it used to. Other species like partridge pea and many of the wildlife edibles are going to be stimulated to grow more effectively now. So we're going to start seeing plants we've never seen out here start to grow, because certain plants have to have fire to germinate the seed. And the only way you get those plants to grow is if you burn the field. Now, obviously I can't just set a field on fire at random with no plan, because things would all burn down and people would get hurt. So instead of doing that, we set up fire lanes across the entire field. These fire lanes are meant to help us contain the fire into a particular area. If you look right here, this is where we created a fire lane. And so as the fire started from way over there, where you see, the difference in the non-burn and burnt, we started the fire over there. People with shovels would tamp it if it tried to escape, and we would just bring it down the line. And so what this does is when we come and we burn the edge, wherever the fire comes from, it hits another fire. So if you burn this side, where we are, and then you burn that side, the fire meets in the middle. So if you didn't do that and the fire started from there and just went on, there would be no burn material to stop it. Because guess what? You can't burn what's already been burned. And we use this knowledge to help plan the burn. Again, south, north, east, west. The best kind of wind to burn on is the south wind. because it's dry and it tends to, come in the right direction for us because we wanted it to go from here to here. And that's exactly what it did. And so as you can see, everything else is just fine. In the summer, we should see a lot of pollinators, a lot of turkey, a lot of songbirds coming in, maybe even some raptorial birds, some birds of prey, because, they exist where their prey exists. Not entirely sure what's going on now, but it seems that some of the local wildlife are bedding at this point. I guess that's what's happening. I don't really know.
So, when you were here, we talked about how fields are high in biodiversity, and not just a field, how many people simply think nothing can live there. Incorrect. Actually, many things, as Reed just mentioned, songbirds, incredible insect life. Hopefully, again, we'll see some turkeys, some rodents, all kinds of things live in fields. Remember when we did the cup our hands thing and listen? Remember all the things that you heard? So we're going to hear some... Oh, you did it this way. Sorry. I cut my ears like this. But how is it? Like this?
So you take it like that.
Like this. That's right. Whatever. We cupped our ears and we heard so much stuff. And that was because fields are habitat for a lot of things. So, again, earlier, when we were panning in, you could see how things here have burned. See that? The black soot. Still, even after a few weeks, this has remained. So, hopefully, this will provide space for more plants to grow. By burning all these things, other things that now normally weren't able to grow because there was not enough space for them, because plants need space, they need water, they need sunlight. So by burning the things that were already growing that were not heat resistant, so we're going to allow plants that are native to this place, and now will have more of a chance to get the sunlight that they need, and now they'll be able to grow in this space. So that's what we did when we had the regulated burn.
Now, there's a reason that we didn't want to burn the portion right up next to the forest. Actually, there's multiple reasons. One of them being we didn't want to burn the forest down. The other reason, as you may remember, this is a very important section of habitat. Does anybody remember what it's called? I'll give you a moment to think. Okay, have you said or thought ecotone? That would be correct.
Also,
all this space here is meant for edge habitat. Yes. If we were to burn it often, we would create a field. If we were to leave it alone all the time, it would become a forest. So we will ensure that the disturbance that occurs to this portion always remains in an intermediate state. You remember the graph we drew? The thing with the graph and the curve? Yeah, we want it right here as the curve is up top, near the maximum biodiversity standpoint. That's right. Yep.
Today we're approaching some native species. We have the Will and the Jeff. They're in their natural habitat. Let's be real quiet as we approach this. You see, they've chosen this spot because...
Now we're in a forest. How do you know we're in a forest?
Oh, look at this incredible...
Are you doing this during the video?
Yeah. Did y'all see this? Do y'all remember what this is called? Check that out. So this is an example of a lichen. You can see how it's on the stick, how it's deriving some nutrients from the remains of the stick, and also how this is branching. I would say filamentous branching. Yeah, so it's branching filamentously, and this is an adaptation for this in order to get more nutrients and increase its like absorption of water when they're available. You see how the tiny, we say filamentous because the little branches are like filaments, and so that creates more surface area or more space for the lichen to get water when it's available, and so it's primed. Now it's not raining all the time, but so it's primed or it's ready for when water is available to soak it up and to use. So that's an adaptation for this to survive in these conditions. So I'm going to set it back on the ground here. And so again, we're in a forest. Remember, we don't see just trees in a forest, but we see lots of things like the lichen or some grasses, creatures, all kinds of cool things. You'll notice again how only certain trees still have their leaves on them. Do you remember the types of trees? Do ya? If you said pine, that would be one answer, one correct answer. You'll notice the pine leaves are needle-like again, and that's an adaptation for them because they're not broadleaf like other hardwoods. These needles are able to still be retained by the tree throughout the winter season. So they're still able to collect sunlight and perform photosynthesis even in the winter months. So, also, pine trees produce seeds in their cones, the pine cones. And so, you can even see some way up there. I don't know if you can see them there, not, but they're not. Yep, that's where they are. That's all I have to say about that. And so again, you can see that this habitat, this ecotone, provides shelter for creatures of the forest. So if a predator were to come, if a predator were to be seeking out these creatures, he would have a harder time finding them because they are sheltered by the briars, the short trees, and oh wait, oh, he's sniffing the air. He doesn't see one. Don't move it. The reed is sniffing the air. He seems to have caught the scent. Maybe if they close their eyes, the reed won't see them. Stand very still. Oh, one's getting away. Oh, they're exposed. Oh, and they got safely away. They're prepared to fight, to defend their honor and the reed appears not to be hungry anymore. Oh no, one is injured. One has been injured, one has gotten away. Never give up, never surrender does not apply to this life form. He's struggling. It seems to have a leg wound. The reed is slowly encroaching. It's going to snap his neck, and the Jeff is no more. The reed will now drag his victim away. Oh, but wait, the fallen comrade's friend is coming back.
Oh, dead giveaway.
Run! And so we see the circle of life in this edge habitat, or the ecotone.
I'm not dead.
Oh, he's not dead? Just a flesh wound.
I think I'll go for a walk.
Well, guys, we enjoyed you coming out here a few weeks ago, and we're glad to be able to check back in with you and show you what's been going on at camp while you've been gone. Also, we now have a Facebook page, Camp Lake Stevens Environmental Education, and an Instagram. Follow us at CLS_environmental_ed. So, thanks for everything. We love you. So, bye. Can we not say these there?
Audrey, what do we say?